Welcome to Allbrands After Hours with me, Courtney Douthat. Well, the kids are asleep, my husband is setting the coffee pot for tomorrow, and I think it's a perfect time for me to tiptoe my way to my sewing room and actually get some sewing done. So if you have a project that you're currently working on, go ahead and grab it and let's sew together. Well, my brother's expecting a baby girl any day now. Okay, maybe she's already born. Maybe it was a month ago. But I think she would really enjoy a handmade quilt made by her favorite aunt. My sisters are now rioting in the comments probably. As a mom of four, I know a great gift is a handmade quilt made with love. Now, especially with these gorgeous fabrics, this one is by Paintbrush Studios. It's a beautiful collection they did. This one is actually a beautiful pink that is from Bella Solids, Moda Bella Solids, and this one as well is from Moda Bella Solids. The great thing about these is that these two came from the second collection, but this one didn't. But it looks like it's a cohesive look that we can make a beautiful quilt out of. So if you have a busier fabric, then bringing in some solids is a great way just to make a full collection. Now, I couldn't find a pattern that I really love going through all of my patterns, so I think the best way for me to start is to actually bring my ScanNCut in, my brother's ScanNCut, and look through all the quilt blocks that are on there. They have so many that are already built in on that machine, so I really can mix and match and make my own custom quilt out of those that are already built into the machine. So let's take a look and see what they have. All right, so with my brother's ScanNCut, I would just go to Patterns, scroll down. Now this is a Disney model, so of course you do see Mickey if we wanted to add him to the quilt block. All right. Like I said, there's so many built into this, so I could just come and scroll. Oh, that one's cute. I really like that one. That one's cute. And I could just decide if I want. If I didn't like any of those, we could go to the next one and go through all of them. That's cute. I really like that one. That one's really, really cute. Now, it is kind of late, and I do want to get done with this quilt pretty quickly, so I think I'm going to pick a pretty easy, straightforward one that I've done quite a few times. Everyone knows this block, of course. Now, the great thing with your ScanNCut is that it is going to show you your finished block size. So this one's telling us it's going to be a 9x9 block. So if we wanted that, we could go ahead and do that one. Now, a baby quilt is usually like a 36-inch by 52-inch quilt. Well, I'm sorry, blanket. I want to get near there. We don't have to get exact. We have to get near. So I'm going to go ahead and up it. Now it's telling me that's as large as it can do. That's perfect. I love that. So I'm going to say okay. And it's going to give me every little block piece that is available for that one. And if we actually selected them, it would show us, hey, this is where those pieces are. So in case we didn't want to only do 2 fabrics, we could do 3, 4, however many, and we know exactly where those pieces are going to be. So I'm going to select, I want to do this one. I hit OK. Everything, it's telling me there's 2. Those are how big they are going to be. So we hit OK, and there they are. If you notice that there are 2 lines around them, one is our seam allowance that it will draw on there for us if we wanted to, and one of it's our cut line. So I'm actually going to have it draw out our seam allowance because I need the guidance, so it would be nice to have. And if we wanted to actually add on more, I would just say, I'm sorry, go back. I would hit add, tell it, hey, I want these blocks too. Okay, set. And there it goes. It's going to add it on there for me. That way I don't even have to put them out there. It's doing it for me. So I'm going to hit OK, and then say, please select. What do I want? Well, I want to draw my seam allowance. So I'm going to hit draw, and we'll pull out our handy little pouch. So you have markers, 2 different kinds. You've got an air soluble and a water soluble, and then you have some regular markers that come with the machine. You do not have to buy this separately. Now, these are made especially for quilting or anything you want to do. So I'm going to take out my holder. All right. So we're going to take our holder right here. We're going to open it up. Take our lid off of our pin. And I'm going to use the water soluble one today just so I can see it better. Here we go. and she's ready to draw for us. All right, so we have our pen holder. We're gonna drop her in there. Clicks. There we go. So what we're going to use today is the gold mat. Tan is what they call it. I call it gold because I'm fancy like that. So we're going to use that one, protective cover off, and no judging how dirty my mat is. I have not cleaned it. We can go over that another day. So what I'm thinking is I want to use these for the actual quilt blocks, and I think I'm going to do 12-foot quilt blocks, like 3 over the top, and then do a strip of this gorgeous fabric, especially because I don't want to have it in a block where maybe the animals will be topsy-turvy or different things like that.
Yeah, future Courtney here. I decided I completely wanted to change my mind on what I wanted to do with the quilt. So you're about to see me explain a bunch of things. I'm realizing I use my hands way too much while I talk. But yeah, I completely changed my mind once I realized what the quilt was going to look like. I wasn't in love with it, so that's the beauty of making your own custom quilt. You can completely change your mind and do something different. So yeah, let's start where we actually are.
Now, so we have to figure out with that block if we wanted it to be which one's which. So I think I'm going to start with my pink fabric here, my Bella Solid, and let's see. I got a whole yard of it. All right, so I'm going to be putting it down on my mat. Now I can cut it, of course. I should cut it because you can't go through the machine with all of this. So I'm going to actually grab my cutting mat. And this one's just an Omni-Grid mat. I like it because it's portable and smaller. I have my big mat, and honestly, I feel like I use this portable one more often. So let's go ahead and we're gonna cut out our fabric. All right, now I went ahead and cut 2 of them. I'll cut more in a minute. But while I'm actually cutting, I'm gonna have the machine cutting as well. So I just cut roughly these 12 by 12 blocks that can go in my machine. So I'm gonna go ahead and put one on my fabric mat, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna cut it out. And while we're doing that, I could be doing this and multitasking, which is awesome. It's like a little helper in the sewing room. All right, doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna roughly put her on there. Well, there shouldn't be bubbles, Courtney. There we go. All right, go. So we're gonna tell it we want to draw first, but first we need to load our mat. So now we can tell it, hey, I want to hit start, I want to draw. And she's gonna go ahead and start drawing. And she's gonna draw our seam allowance for us because I need the help, okay? Any kind of additional help I can have while quilting is always good. And she's so quick, I swear. Oh gosh, done already? So, do you want to select the next part, finish? We want to finish this exact same one. So we're gonna select and we're gonna cut. But we gotta change out our holder because this is not the holder we want. It is, oops, where did it go? This holder. We want this one, this is the tan one. This is your fabric holder. So we're going to drop that into our machine. And we're going to hit cut. We're going to hit it better than that. There we go. And what she's going to do is she's telling us, hey, do you want to put half cut on? Is half cut off? Half cut is off. Half cut is when we do vinyl or anything, we only go halfway. So we want a full cut on that. Should we do a test cut? Yes, but we are rebels, so we are not. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to hit start. You're already done. Okay, let's unload. All right. Now, take our spatula. I love that part. It's like the best part. Oh my gosh, look at that. Beautiful seam allowance done. Oh my gosh, it's so perfect. Oh my goodness, look at how perfect. So now, all of our blocks, this one is all done. So we can just set these to the side if we wanted to. If we wanted to go ahead and cut out all of our blocks, we set these aside. We could leave them on the mat if we had extra mats. That way it's not slipping away to anywhere. So I'm gonna put these right here to the side and go ahead and do my next ones. So we want to select the next part. So remember we did the first two, but now we need to do this square. And we could do as many as we need if we wanted to add additional blocks, but I just want to do it for this one block. So I'm going to hit OK. Okay. Telling this forward, that's their size. We're going to hit set, and they've set them on there for me. So I went ahead and pre-cut some fabric. So I'll put another sheet onto here. That was not straight. There we go. Okay. And my fabric's not pre-treated with anything at all. It's just regular cotton fabric. All right, we're going to hit OK. We're going to select and we're going to draw. We're going to put our holder in with our water soluble marker. And hit start. All right, we're going to hit cut and cut them the same way. Alright, now we have our pink blocks. I'm going to go ahead and finish on with our green ones in the exact same way. Now that we have all of our blocks cut out with our seam allowance, we're going to go ahead, you can see it better on that one. We're going to go ahead and start sewing them together. Alright, let's finally sew. So I have all my pieces here, my seam allowance drawn and everything like that. So we're going to actually start piecing. This is the Luminaire XP1. She's a gorgeous machine. And I'm actually about to get the upgrade to the 2 and then upgrade to the 3. So I'm pretty excited about that, to actually have it in my home. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to hit sewing. Our foot is in there and now we can start piecing. So the first pieces are these right here. So we're going to put them together. This way, Courtney. There we go. Now you can pin this if you want. It's completely up to you. I'm just gonna match mine. And usually with this kind of thing, I like to use wonder clips. So we're going to raise our foot. Here we go. Now, since I know that my other few blocks are pretty much similar, where it's got pink on one side, green on the other with our triangles, I'm going to go ahead and just chain stitch those together. And then that way we can start knocking out more at once. Okay, so now we have a really great little banner. I'm just going to cut them apart. And then we have our iron over here. So move these blocks out of our way real quick. And we have our little iron. This is just a Nifty Notions little iron. It's great and portable. So we are going to open our blocks up. You can finger press them if you want. Now with my blocks, you're always told to iron towards the dark side. That way there's nothing being seen through your lighter fabric if you have a lighter fabric. If it's a busy fabric and it's really dark, I don't think it matters. Or you can open them up. And then that way, everything's like nice and even on the bottom. So I actually prefer opening mine up and ironing it that way, just because I know that this block's gonna have a lot of points and I don't wanna make anything too heavy on one side. So we're going to open it up and just give it a quick little press. Now she's a baby, she won't care, but I'll know. There we go. Got that one nice and done. You can always give her a little press on the top. Okay, next one. You know, my mother-in-law, she always gave a quilt or a knitted blanket or some kind of gift like that when someone had a baby. So I like to think that I'm keeping that tradition on every time I give someone one. Her seams just looked a lot better than mine, so maybe we won't look too close at some of these. Okay, so now that we have them all pressed, we're going to take our next block and go ahead and stitch her up. Now here's the point where I would go ahead and start pinning. It's whenever we have our blocks pretty much done, just in 3 parts. So we're going to start combining them together. So I want to make sure that the points right here start meeting up, so I'm gonna go ahead and start pinning. Okay, finally, the last press of this block. And I will say, it's not the best job I've ever done, but it's not the worst job I've ever done. So I'm going to count this as a win. Alrighty. Give her a final press up top. And this block is looking great. I just realized that one of my lines for my seam allowance is somehow on the top of the block, which is fine because it's a water soluble. It will wash away and no one will know, except everyone watching this. Okay, now with our first square done, she's gorgeous, she's wonderful. We want to go ahead and start working on our second square. Now I thought about just doing that one block for all of them, but I think it would actually be really fun to do like a ninja star block. I've already got my pieces cut, so I'm just gonna go ahead and lay her together. That way, whenever I'm sewing, I can just grab and sew, and I won't have to worry about what piece goes where or anything like that. Plus, it's nice and fun to see your block before it's actually finished. I am missing a piece. Where did I put that? I'm gonna blame the kids. They're asleep, but I'm gonna blame the kids. We all know it was the kids. Okay, now we're good. All right. There we go. So now we just have it roughly set out. I can leave it right there while I go ahead and sew. Now on this one we just went real quickly, but I'll go a little bit more in depth into this one. So if you've never sewn and this is one of your first tutorials you've ever seen, God bless you. What I usually do is, like if you show by this block, it's you've got squares and you've got triangles. So with your triangles, you'll have these little points on. There we go. You've got the little points. You'll see right here, they're like little divots. So what you would do is you would actually line them up perfectly, or as perfect as you can get it. If anyone's looking that closely at your seams, they need to leave. So you would line them up, and then that way when you put it into your machine, everything's lined up and you sew off. If you notice my square's not perfectly lined up, you know what, it's fine, and you have a seam allowance, you'll be fine. So normally what I do is I actually take all of my triangles and I sew them together. I do what is called a chain stitch, where I just keep putting them in the next one, next one, next one, and then that way they're all sewn in a little bit faster. Some people say it saves thread. I don't think it saves thread. I'm not sure about that, but it is nice and orderly for me just to get those pieces out, get them pressed, get them laid out, and then I don't have to sew any of these because they're squares until I sew them to that block that is made of the two triangles. So let's go ahead and get sewing. Okay, we've got another banner. So we're just going to come through with our scissors and just snip each one of the little threads like that. Boop. Now, we could go ahead and press. I think we should. That way it's just easier whenever you're sewing along that everything is pressed. Okay, so let's go ahead and take our top row and sew it together. Flip her on over. Again, we're going to meet up our seams right there. Make sure that they're sandwiched in there quite nicely together, and we're going to pin them. You don't have to pin. I just think that it usually gives you a better result at matching up or being more likely to match up. It's not always perfect. I don't always match mine up, if I'm being honest with you, but I do have a better chance of matching them up if I do that. All right, all of my blocks are done now. I completely changed my idea as I was sewing it together and kind of looking at my blocks. I wasn't loving it, which is great about making a quilt from absolutely nothing in your brain, is that you can change it and modify it. You can do that with a pattern as well. So I decided to cut my fabric that is the little animals and stuff and just into squares instead of doing strips. I want to give them more of a moment, and then that way each block can have their own moment in between each one of these. So let's go ahead and take our blocks and we are going to start sewing them together. So for this particular one, I need a block, I need a solid square with our animal fabric. I'm going to line those up like this, or as best as I can, and I'm going to go ahead and sew them onto each other. Okay, we got those two together. And now we'll take our other block that we have and put them down right sides together. And again, as close as possible. And if you want to pin it, especially in the middle, it's perfectly fine. Let's see, there we go. Now what we can do is start laying it out. So once we have our strips like this, we can decide where we want everything. Got some loose threads, there we go. Let's go ahead, and for, I think our next one, what we could do is we could have, instead of the animal print in the center, we could have it flanking on both sides. So that way it kind of mixes it up. All right, like that, and like that. And let's sew it together. Whew. All right, our quilt top is done. I think she's came out beautiful. So now what we need to do is make a quilt sandwich. What is a quilt sandwich, Courtney? Quilt sandwich is when you take your topper that you've now made and pieced together, you take some batting, and then you take a backing fabric. And what you're going to do is you're going to layer those on top of each other. And that way you can go ahead and quilt them into your machine or anything like that. Or you could just leave it like that, trim the edges, whatever you want to do. But I would like to put some kind of design onto this. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and change the foot on my machine if I want to do free motion quilting. I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to put this foot on. This foot, I'm going to put this foot on. It's got an open toe on it. Just easier for me to be able to see what I'm doing, but it has that spring loader, which is what we want if we're going to free motion quilt. All right, so you could start anywhere you want on the quilt. It's really up to you. What I usually like to do is either start in the middle and then kind of work my way around, or I like to start in a corner and just kind of go through it. So you have to decide if you're going to start in a corner or up at the top. What you need to decide is, okay, if I'm starting here and I'm free motioning and I'm quilting, and then I'm keep making my way here, I'm gonna have to start rolling up my quilt on this side. So do you want to end where it's rolled up in the center, or do you want to have the opposite effect where it's going out once you get to the end? Personally, I'm going to try it the other way. I do it both. It depends. If you're first time quilting, I really recommend to start with a smaller quilt instead of a big one, because you've got to get the hang of handling that quilt and kind of maneuvering it where you want. So careful, I have pins in it. Usually I don't want to have pins, like sharp pins like this, because as I'm going, I don't want my hand to hit them. Usually I'll use a safety pin, some long safety pins to put in there, because if you have something like a wander clip, that's really only going to be able to go out into the outside of it. You're not going to be pinching the inside of your quilt. So safety pins, usually what I have. Can't find any of mine, of course, so I'm using these pins. So I wonder if we should put a count over how many times I get stuck in the hand with one. And I love the XP machines because they have a light right here, so all of this is illuminated, which is great, instead of it being like darker in the throat area. Okay, so I've decided for this quilt what I want to do is, since it is kind of jungle themed like that, I want to kind of keep going with that. So I'm going to actually do a wavy line, and every once in a while I'll put a leaf in, especially if it's a point where I feel like I need to add something. If I'm getting too far away from the wavy lines, if one's just kind of being a little odd, I can add a leaf there so it feels like I'm closer to that wavy line and I'm not so far away. So let's go ahead. I dropped my feed dogs on my machine. So, and I have my O foot in here. If you have an XP1, that is a foot that I would recommend. And we're gonna go ahead and start. Let me take that pin out. All right. And I'm just maneuvering it very lightly. And again, I don't want to have, terrible job because I'm trying to talk and do this. I don't want to have a ton in one area, so we're going to do a little leaf, come back out. Just going to straighten that out, and feel free to stop during your quilting anytime you feel like you need to reposition or change anything. Your needle's down, so nothing's moving really. Especially if your foot's down too, really nothing's going to move. So let's go ahead and start. Especially if you feel like your fabric's getting bunched up in any kind of way, go ahead and stop wherever you want. Now I was having a plan, or I did have a plan, to put the leaves every once in a while opposite sides, but honestly I haven't been keeping up with it. So they're kind of just willy-nilly, which is fine. Alrighty. So now we're at the top. I'm gonna go ahead and quilt over to the next area. Not really measuring out how far I want these to be. You can, but I'm just kind of letting it tell me where it wants to go. This is where I would stop. You feel like everything's getting bunched up. I'm gonna re-straighten myself back out. All right, and then I'm good to go. I'm even adding a few that are like double leaves, where I feel like, hey, this part's not really sitting the way that I want. I'm gonna add some double leaves into there. Like right here, don't like how that fabric is sitting, so I'm gonna add some double leaves every once in a while. Stop, let me straighten myself back out. And honestly, if I had my gloves on, this would be a lot better. When you're holding your quilt, you want it to be able to freely kind of move around, and having the gloves kind of helps with that. It gives it a little, what's the word? Not grit, but you kind of hold on a little bit better. All right, let's keep going. And if I mess up, we'll call it a customization. I really love the free motion quilting we did. It just kind of adds to it where it looks like it's a leaf-y pattern, but it's not overwhelming. It's not covering up our animals, but then when we are on the blocks, you can kind of see it on the blocks, and it's just adding to it. Like there's our 2 leaf, there's my hair, there's 1 leaf. This one I messed up, so I doubled back on her. But honestly, if I hadn't pointed that out, would you have noticed? Probably. No, I'm just kidding. Oh my goodness, we're done with this part. So we've free motioned all over it, and now we're going to go back and add the binding. Well, I think the baby's going to love this quilt. Thanks so much for sewing along with me and helping me check off a project off my to-do list. Now make sure to show up next week, where we'll be falling in love with some fall-inspired projects. Have a good night.